Hello again and welcome to another U10 mini lesson where I attempt to explain, clarify, or elaborate or anything else, any questions, comments, or concerns you might have about drumming or music in general, but particular about drumming. As always, this is all a one-take unscripted episode, so whatever happens, happens. If I make a mistake, I make a mistake. That's life. Let's have some fun. So today we're going to be talking about the popular dot, and I was again trying to think about would it be more fun to call this the popular period, or was I trying to think of the dreadful dot? But the popular period, this is not English grammar, therefore it's not a period, and the dreadful dot, it's not dreadful. It's not. The popular dot actually is really popular, so let's just go with that. The popular dot, what it does, isn't it awesome just like that? What the popular dot does is it adds, and I wrote it down, the popular dot adds an extra half value of the note it's representing. So a dot equals 0.5 of the note next to it. We're going to do a breakdown of something on the next page, so stay with me there. But the best way to think about this is a whole note is usually 4 counts. With a dot, a whole note gets 2 more counts because 4 divided by 2 is 2. So 4 plus 2 is 6. Good so far? For a dotted half note, because a half note is usually 2 beats, the quarter note is going to be one of those beats because 2 divided by itself by half is 1, just like 4 divided by 2 is 2. So you're going to be 2 divided by half is 1, so 2 plus 1 equals 3. So a dotted half note would last 1, 2, 3, and then on the 4th beat of the measure, you would play again, or your next instructions of resting or playing would come again at that point. A dotted quarter note is going to be 1 plus a half of 1, which is an 8th note, or 0.5 of a note, and so that would make it 1E and a 2E, because an 8th note is 1E, and then the next 8th note would begin on the and. That's why we count them 1 and. And the half note dotted would be 0.5 plus an 16th note, which is 0.75 or 1/4 of a beat. So that would be 0.5 plus 0.25 equals 0.75 or 1/4 of a beat. So you would go 1E, because that's a half note, or that's a 8th note, plus, so 1E and 1E and. So the next note you would have to worry about would come on the of the beat. So 1E and then the next note would start 2, or 1E and 1. Excuse me. I think that's a pretty good way of describing it. My personal favorite way of describing this is if you've ever been to a movie theater, or we'll start with movie theater first. And if you ever noticed, whenever you look at movie times, they're always done in minutes. And most minutes with movies, with screenplay wise, are done 90 minutes to an hour and 90 minutes to 120 minutes, which is an hour and a half to 2 hours. The popular dot, if you saw it on a movie, would be like, let's say, if the movie was 90 minutes long but had a dot next to it, you would know that would actually mean that movie was 90 minutes plus a half of 90 minutes, which is 45 minutes, which math is going to be 135 minutes, which is an hour and 15 minutes. Yeah. Yes. 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 Yeah, an hour 15 minutes. Math. Good times. If you're going to do a 2-hour movie or 120 minutes, it would have a dot next to it, and that would mean it was 120 minutes plus a half of itself, which would be 60 minutes, which would be 180 minutes, which would be 3 hours long. I like to make the joke about Avengers Endgame, which is 186 minutes, which is 3 hours and 6 minutes, so 186 minutes. A half of that is going to be 93 minutes. So imagine adding 93 minutes on to Avengers Endgame. Spoiler alert, Batman's not in Avengers Endgame. So it would be 93 minutes plus 106 minutes. 93 plus 186 minutes would be a mini-series of Avengers Endgame, Oh my gosh, that'd be intense. That would be another way of 3 hours plus an hour and a half. So 4.5 hours. That's a mini series right there, folks. The other way to think about it is if you play video games and let's say your video game is 10 hours long and you download the DLC and the DLC it's like it has a dot next to it and so that what that means is the video game is 10 hours long but the dot adds another half of its value so that would be 10 plus 5 because 5 is half of 10 so the DLC would be 5 hours long so that would make it a 15-hour long game or to really hopefully help you understand this, let's say we're going to go watch a football game because marching season we play football games. A football game is normally 4 quarters. That's when the game ends. But let's say we're going to go 4 quarters with a dot. And what that would mean is we would play 2 more quarters, not overtime, but we would play 2 more quarters. And because high school rules are 12 minutes long, we would play 2 more 12-minute quarters. So we'd end up playing a lot more football. Think about any sport you play. Soccer would be 90 plus 45. Baseball would be MLB style would be 9 innings plus 4.5 innings, which sure. Basketball would be the 4 quarters plus 2 more quarters, that kind of thing. Hockey would be 3 periods plus a period and a half. So, yeah, that hopefully that makes sense. Now I'm gonna add this little part because I want to make sure everyone understands this. I'll move this close again so we can all see it. Take a screenshot if you want to. I talked a little about this in the earlier video, but I want to make sure we all know. A 16th note is 1/4 of a beat. So in a 4/4 measure, it's 1E and 2E and 3E and 4E and a quarter note is 1/4 of that, so 1E and a 16th note is 1/4 of a quarter note, so 1/4 of 1/4. With me so far, just look at the link in the video I posted with link in Posey times the integer of 1/4. Really, it sounds more complicated than it is, so I need to make sure I'm explaining this the best way possible. So a 16th note is 1/4 of a quarter note. So you've got the 16th note plus 16, 16, 16 rest. Now, an 8th note is going to be 2 16th notes, so 1E. So the next time you would worry about a note playing or reading is going to be on the and. If I add a dot to that 8th note, it's going to be 3 16th note beats. So 1E and then the next note we'd have to worry about is the of that beat. So 1E and is going to be that next one. Quarter note is going to be 4 16th notes because that will be 4 16th notes to a beat. If I add a dot to that, I get 6 16th notes because you've got 4 16th notes plus 2 more or half of that. So 4 divided by itself is 2. You get 6. So you would go 1E and 2E, and the next note you would worry about playing on or thinking about is going to be the and of the next beat, which would be beat 2. So 1E and 2E and, okay? 6 16th notes. I know that's sounding a little bit confusing. I'm making this a little bit more, I guess, complicated than it needs to be, but I'm trying to go from the most basic and then build it up. It's, if you think about it, I like to make it like that where it's, you start with the most basic even though there's 16 16th notes versus 4 quarter notes. So just imagine, look at the top measure again, the one right there. I know my Sharpie is not the prettiest thing in the world, but you've got 1/4 of a beat, and that's the smallest. We can go smaller than that, but for sanity's sake, we're not going to. So one of those 16th notes equals 2 notes for an 8th note. So if I put 2 16th notes together, that is automatically 1 8th note for percussion, for beat keeping. So 1 E and 1 E and 2. Hopefully that makes sense. If I were to add, remember, if I were to add an eighth note, if I were to do the eighth note instead, a dotted eighth means you would have 3/16 notes. A normal eighth is 2/16 notes, and an eighth note is just one. So 1 E, a dot would be 1 E and then the next time you would play would be on the of that beat. I'm hoping I'm explaining that correctly in a way that makes sense to you. I know I can have weird metaphors. It's a trademark, Cam's weird metaphors at this point. If you have any more questions or concerns, please let me know, because this can be very confusing if you're trying to overthink it or anything else like that. If you do have any more questions, please let me know. There was not much playing this lesson, and that's okay. But to quote the man who makes our marching sticks, Scott Johnson, if you're not having fun, you're doing it wrong, and I'll see you later. Bye.